Military installations and UFO sightings have a rich history. You've probably heard of the Rendlesham Forest incident or even the Maelstrom Air Force Base incident that was mentioned in the AOI MSG UFO hearing back in 2021. But today we will be covering a handful of cases that you might have not heard of before. And although we are looking at past cases, UAP and objects sometimes described as unidentified drones are still being seen over military installations around the world. The question is, why? Hello and welcome to this episode of Mysteries with a History, where you'll be taken on a wild ride into the unknown, the strange, and the mysterious. Like you, I have questions, and like you, I want answers. And with each episode together, we will peel away the layers to look for the truth. After a super long vacation, my co host, Jimmy Church, is back. Let's bring him on. Jimmy, it's been what, several months?
And nothing works anymore. Nothing works. Nothing works. Nothing works. It's so crazy. And welcome back, everyone, and Cristina. It's been.
I should be telling you that. Welcome back, everyone.
Well,
And
you went on your own little hiatus too, as well. So don't act like I'm the one that caused the 3-week delay. But anyway, so we're both back. We're both back. And what I was going to say is this, and then we'll just move on. It's really strange. So I shut down. Normally, I just leave everything on here in the studio. Most things. I turn off the cameras. I turn off the lights. But the computers all stay running, so I don't have to reboot them every single day and do all of that. But I left, and so I shut everything down. Since I have been back, it has been nothing but a string of driver updates, Windows updates, camera updates, this update, controller updates. And so just so everybody knows, right before the show, I did the news earlier today, Cristina, no issues, camera. So we start this, my camera's not working. We're going live in a few minutes. I reboot my computer. That doesn't fix it. Christina's like, I can hear you. And I'm clicking, and all of a sudden I just popped up for no reason, by the way. I didn't do anything. I just popped up. But that's part of getting back into, you know what I mean? Getting back in the swing. Are you back in the swing of things?
I like to think so, but you're right. When you step back, honestly, even just for a few days, and then you get back into streaming, have it be usually when it's live, you lose a little bit of your finesse, and then you gotta like re-find it all over again.
Yeah. Now, you ready for this? Okay, I want you to see my shirt. It
Okay.
says Taku Harley
Yeah.
Davidson, right? Okay.
Nice.
So I'm up in Juneau, Alaska, and I'm coming off of the ship, right? We're gonna go and do some stuff in Juneau. It was a lot of fun. Anyway, so I'm coming down the gangway across the street at the port. Juneau's small. Is a Harley Davidson shop. I was like, I'm going in there, right? I'm going in there. So I went in and I bought a few shirts, but the shirt on the back, I would show it to you. It's no big deal, but it says the farthest Harley dealer. I think that's what they call it. The farthest. Yeah. A Harley dealer in Juneau, Alaska. So that's what I'm wearing. If anybody was wondering, it's got a wolf. Yeah. It's really cool. Really cool. Yeah. Right there. It was like, oh, and so
It's always exciting to find those little shops in the middle of nowhere, and you're like, "This is what I live for." It's these
like
kind of places.
like in the middle of nowhere, right? Yeah, up there amongst the icebergs. So everyone, Cristina calls me last night and says, okay, so church, by the way, that's what she calls me. Church, what's up? What's up, Gomez? Okay, so what do you want to do tomorrow? And I said, well, how about this? She goes, no. I said, okay, well, how about this? And she goes, nah, no. I said, okay, well, how about this? No. Well, what do you want to do? I don't know. Well, I just gave you 3 Yeah, no, church, not good enough. So I got struck down, and she promised that she would let me know this morning, and she did, with a great idea, which is UFOs over military installations, not missile silos. And I was like, her words, by the way, her words, no missile silos. And I thought, what a great idea. So let's get started on this. And before we get this rolling, I have made a lot of comments over the years. So I would suggest um, some of you, if not all of you, do the same thing. Go and get, and Cristina and I were talking about this last night. Go and get some of the books out there, like Top Secret, Timothy Good, Donald Kehoe, The Case for Flying Saucers, that's 1956. Richard Dolan's excellent books, UFOs in the National Security State, volumes 1 and volumes 2, volumes 1 and 2, and go and look and go through the research that has been done on this subject in a historical context, going back before Roswell, and to see the amount of UFOs that were reported by the military over installations around the world is unbelievable. And we could literally spend 2, 3, 4, 5 months going through all of them. And so I would suggest everybody do just that. And it's an easy thing for me to do because I have the books, and I just started pulling up different cases today. Some of them are my more favorite cases, Christina, but they're often overlooked. You have to go back. You're not going to make a documentary over a single sighting in Kansas over an Air Force base, right? So they tend to get overlooked with all the other larger cases that surround it that you had mentioned at the start of the show. So for everybody, it is for me, a very interesting and compelling way to do the research is to go back and see what the military was reporting, what they were seeing, and what the military personnel on the ground were talking about, what they were seeing in the skies. So let's go. I'm ready. Are you? Now,
I
uh, I'm going to let you start and pick. I've got some surprise stuff that I haven't mentioned to Christina. I do that every show, and so stand by for that. But where do you want to start with all of this today?
I'd actually like to start with the list that I sent, just kind of like going in that order. But first, I want to say, Android, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. And it says, "Welcome back, you two. Honorable mention, red glowing cube UFO over Annenberg Air Force Base. Creepy." Hold on to that, Android.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah. You
get
stay
ahead
right.
of your
Stay put.
horses.
Yeah, stay put.
Yeah, stay right
Stay
there.
put.
But
Stay put.
it's a
Stay
good
put.
one. So I think starting off with Edwards Air Force Base, and there was a really famous case that took place back in 1965. But when I was calling Jimmy this morning to compare some notes, he's like, "You didn't mention the one in the 1950s." So I'm actually putting you on the spot here, Jimmy, for that one that took place before 1965.
Right, right. Okay, and thank you for that. Edwards Air Force Base, it's no secret, is down the street from me. It's about 7, 8 miles away. It's very large, very secretive, and it is a testing and training facility. All right. You don't have any fighter squadrons there and things that are deployed around the world in wartime. It is a testing and training facility, uber top secret, and it is very large. What is important to note about Edwards is that in the 1950s, okay, so Lockheed was up at Burbank Airport, and they needed an extension that was away from the population to test their aircraft that they were designing at the time. And they also needed a large facility to land this stuff. There were a few things that were happening at that same time, which were things like The sound barrier, right? Chuck Yeager. And the Bell X1, you had the X-15 rocket plane. And what is out here is the Merock dry lake bed. And it's really long, it's miles long. And the space shuttles could land out there and everything else. So, anyway, that's what Edwards Air Force Base is. Now, let's back up. Before everything started to blow up, um, uh, Edwards Air Force Base was called Merock Army Airfield, the Merock Dry Lake Bed. And so out at Merock, around there were a few events that happened that are all very similar. But one of the first to happen, now these are test pilots that are out there. It's a training facility. The most skilled and best aviators that we had in the world were all at Edwards Air Force Base. One of the pilots, he is walking from the airstrip, and he's walking into a building, and something catches his eye. Now, I'm paraphrasing. The story is long and it involves a lot of people, but this is how he described it. That something catches his eye. He looks up, and there is a metallic ball at a few thousand feet that appeared to be circling over Edwards, Merock. And so as he stops and he looks at it, and he knew where the wind direction was coming from, and he knew about balloon launches and everything else. And this was metallic, and it was circling and moving against the wind. And he was estimating, and this is before the jet age, that this craft was going about 300 miles per hour in a circle against the wind. Others started to gather and look up at this. So they made a note. They tracked it on radar. The craft then headed to the north towards San Francisco and disappeared over the mountains. Later on that day, they came back outside, and there were two now. Again, moving against the wind, which is important. They were also tracked on radar. And this report, which is in a couple of different books, including Richard Dolan's books, this original sighting was reported and became an incident with the Army. This is before the Air Force was created. And this is at the same location where there are the reports of Eisenhower, and we'll get into that in just a minute, and other things. Over the years, so many sightings were happening above what would then become Edwards Air Force Base. It became commonplace. And the aviators that are out there, all professionals, including the radar installations out there, it is such a top secret area. This is where I got hassled by the military police. I've talked about that. I've showed the pictures, and I've had my own sightings out there too as well that continue through to this day. And that's Edwards Air Force Base. We're going to go to a couple of other situations. I wanted to make this one quick comment before we move on. We've got a lot to cover. When I was being questioned by the Air Force police out there, I told them what I did. And I said to one of them, I go, "You ever see anything out here?" And he goes, "What? The aliens?" Cristina, just like that. I did not, right? And I said, "Well, yeah, the aliens." He goes, "Look, man, we have all," and these are his words, "we have all heard the stories. We've seen what's on the news, the flying saucers that are in our possession." He said, "Look, I haven't seen anything, but we're talking about it. And I think that we all want to see something, but I have not seen anything." And I thought that was interesting coming from the military police directly. that this was not a big secret on base, that this stuff is talked about. And Edwards is constantly mentioned now in the media for being one of these locations. So that's what I have for some of the earliest stuff that has gone on out at Edwards. Tell us about the case from 1965.
But one question I have before we continue is when you were speaking to this military official, what year was that in for him to just be kind of
Six
openly?
6 months ago.
Oh, so very recent,
Oh
2024.
yeah. Oh yeah. 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 I was on my Harley. So I've had my Harley for a year. So it was about 6 months ago. Yeah.
That's impressive. It really is, especially just to have them openly speak out about it, even though obviously the response was still decently caged. If you were to ask that same question 20, 30, 40 years ago, they'd be like, I know nothing of that. I don't know what you're talking about. And they would actually laugh in your face,
You
right?
might get arrested. Yeah, you might get arrested. And remember, I didn't frame the question. I didn't say ET. I didn't do that. I said, "Have you ever seen anything strange out here?" And he goes, "What? Them aliens?" And I was like, "Whoa. Whoa. Yeah, well, now that it's on the table, what about the aliens?" Yeah. Yeah, he said everybody's talking about it on the base. So, is that I think I is this a picture I took?
This is the one that I found online, but maybe
Okay.
you did take one very similar with this
Yeah, I've
nice
took
blue sky and no clouds.
yeah, I've taken now there are 2 signs like this. No, there's 3. I'm sorry, there's
Yeah,
3.
there's several. Yeah.
Uh, out there. There is the south entrance, which has billboards behind it. So I don't think that this is it. I think this is the one on the east side. It's called Rocket Site Road, very close to the area where I got, let's just say, detained by the military police. But yeah, there's 3 of these signs, and yeah, I've got quite a few, and they're large. That's a big sign. Yeah, it's amazing. Now, if you look behind this sign, just to give everybody context, everything to the left, everything to the right, you see that desert? That's all Edwards Air Force Base, all the way. And then on the right hand side, take your arrow, your mouse over to the mountains on the right, go up. That's where my house is, right where the mountains are, right there. So that's where I live. I live on the south side of the base, but I live in a small town, and trust me, it is right. I can look out my window here and see that mountain that you see in the picture here. So yeah, okay. 1965. What happened?
So, October 7th, 1965, there were a handful of people that saw a strange UFO in the sky at about 1:30 a.m. that lasted several hours, which is very interesting. So, you had air traffic controller Chuck Sorrells, and he observed multiple UFOs with these unusual lights and movement patterns starting at the middle of the night. What it was 1:30 a.m. and it involved one large stationary UFO and several smaller, highly maneuverable objects. I want to stop there just for a moment because we've heard this description countless times. And we're going to hear it again a little bit later today where we hear about this mothership, this large UFO, and then these smaller ones that are a lot faster that are truly acting more like drones than it being operated from the inside. And so there were multiple witnesses, including base personnel, pilots, and all these people corroborated the sighting. There were even radar operators at 4 different sites, including the Los Angeles Defense Sector, that detected the object. And then there was an FO6 jet that was scrambled to investigate. But of course, they were unable to intercept the UFO. And when that took place, the captain was Daryl Clark of the 329 Flight Interceptor Squadron. He was among some of the witnesses that went to attempt and chase this object in the sky. but they weren't able to get anywhere close to it, let alone capture it. And this is something that, again, we hear consistently with military personnel attempting to chase these objects. But my question is, and it always has been, how are they meant to catch it? Like, do they what are they going to use? Are they gonna crash into it and hope for the best and then take a parachute out of there? Do they think an extra step onto what they're going to do after they succeed?
Right,
Do you
right.
know their protocol on that?
Yeah, see, there have been reports about this. I've talked to quite a few people about this. It is a touchy subject out here. I am going to just for you, Christina. I'm going to pop this up really quick, just so everybody can appreciate this. It's actually pretty cool. There you go. There you go. Now this is the east sign. So the one that you had posted, that's the south sign. But anyway, there you go. There's my Harley, and there's Edwards Air Force Base, and I've got a lot of stuff like this now. But that has always been part of the. I'm going to say the myth, right? The folklore that goes on out here is that there's also testing and possibly shoot down of craft. And now in testing, so I don't know if there is, how do I say this? I have never heard of like some offensive fire on a UFO, at least out here by Edwards. I have not. To think that we would be doing that over the country, but then again, we shot missiles at balloons, didn't we? A few years ago. Remember that?
Yeah, it was in February of last year. Can you believe that? It was already a year ago now, and it's something
No,
that we
no, that
still
was
don't have.
2 years ago. Don't do that to me. It was 2 years
What?
ago.
It
Yeah, it was two
was it
years ago.
already?
Yeah.
I can't keep up with the years
No,
anymore. It's like you
you
hit a
know,
certain age, Jimmy, and then, like, you
I
just
know.
can't keep up with how old you are or
Yeah.
how long time has passed.
Uh,
It's unbelievable, and
I'm
if
gonna
you're
have
going to
to.
go hit that.
I'm gonna have to get you a walker.
You
I'm gonna
know
have to
what?
get. I'm gonna
That'd
have
be
to
cool,
get.
and then it's, like, secretly like a ninja weapon, go pow, pow,
Yeah,
pow. That'd be
yeah,
really
yeah,
cool.
yeah, 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 yeah. Get you a walker. No, the only reason why I remember that specifically is because it was Caroline Corey that stood up in the middle of my luncheon at the Conscious Life Expo, and that was 2 years ago. It wasn't this past luncheon; it was 2 years ago when she stood up with her phone and shouted out, "We just shot at it." Anyway, but back to Edwards. So uh, there is a movie. It's called The 11th Green, and excellent movie. Everybody should go and check it out. The 11th Green is a movie about Eisenhower making contact with ET on the 11th green of a golf course in Palm Springs, and then goes out to Edwards Air Force Base here and strikes a deal with the aliens, and a contract is drawn up and an agreement is made. Lots to this story. Did it happen? Right? He was supposed to have officially gone to the dentist, had to get a tooth pulled or something, and used that excuse to make it over to Edwards Air Force Base, which is about an hour northwest of Palm Springs. So yeah, Edwards Air Force Base, lots of action. Now, okay, so I'll tell this story since we're talking about UFOs over military bases. I've told the story many times, but I'll share it with everybody on this show. When I was house shopping here in Palmdale, I was meeting my realtor, and I checked into a hotel in Palmdale, Hilton, and Hilton Suites or something. Anyway, that doesn't matter. but that was on a Saturday night, and I decided that I wanted In-N-Out Burger at 10 o'clock. So I got up, left my hotel room, went down, and I'm looking at my Jeep, and and I say to myself, Edwards is right there. Let's go. So I jump in the Jeep, I punch in the GPS, and I take off. I don't know where I'm at. I didn't know Palmdale like I know it today, but I see Edwards Air Force Base, and I'm just taking roads that are going to take me close. And I see this one, the closest road south of the base. So I head out there, and I'm getting close, and I can see Edwards off in the distance. I pull off to the side of the road. It was a T-bone in front of me, so I couldn't go any further on the road. So I pulled over, and I get out of the Jeep. I go across the street. Now I'm looking at Edwards off in the distance, a couple of miles away, and I can see it. I didn't realize that I was in the remote desert. I didn't know. I didn't know where I was at, and it was dark. But I was standing there, Cristina, on the road, and I could see the fence line in front of me, and I could see the warning, restricted access, use of deadly force authorized, signs of the right in front of me. And as I'm standing there and I'm looking at Edwards in the night sky, up maybe 10 degrees, 20 degrees in front of me, I see static in the sky, like static on a TV, black and white, gray static. And I see it. Oh, that's interesting. And then the static took the shape of like a football or like an eye kind of shape. It was a distance away, a couple of miles up in the air. And I thought, wow, but it was big. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And as that happened, a few seconds later, the static, it got bright. This ring of lights went white lights, blink, and went out. And the lights were in a circle. and I thought, wow, that's weird. Okay. I wasn't thinking UFO. And my cell phone is in my hand. It's in my right hand. And then about a minute later, I'm going to say, it happened again. Static, shape of like this football, and then this ring of lights, black. And then I was like, okay, that was strange. So I get my cell phone ready, put it on video, and I stand there for 20 minutes, maybe, nothing. It never came back. So I get back in the Jeep. I drive back to the hotel. The next morning, I'm meeting my realtor in the afternoon. I get up, I have breakfast. I walk back outside, and I look over across the desert. I'm like, man, let's go back to Edwards. So I jump in my Jeep. I drive back, follow my GPS, went back, pulled over into the same tracks that I left from the night before. I look around, and that's when I noticed that it was the desert, that I was in the middle of nowhere. I went across the street, and I could see my footprints in the dirt. And I stand there, and then I look, and I can see Edwards. And above it was just the blue sky. There was nothing there. I was thinking maybe that these were lights on big poles or radio antennas or something. I don't know, for aircraft. But there was nothing there, nothing but blue sky. That's when I thought I saw something I couldn't explain. And I got in the car and drove away, certainly thinking I saw a craft. I don't know what it was, but it was directly above Edwards. Directly above. Right above it. Yeah.
That's actually so insane, and what's crazy is that you've had a lot of UFO sightings over the years, but to have it at Edwards Air Force Base is truly remarkable, and I do wanna state it for those watching this, if you're enjoying the show, hit that like button right down below, and Craig, the tech guy, thank you so much for the $2 super chat. It says, "Maybe they like the food." You know, to be fair, there is some amazing dishes around the world that if I were an alien, I would definitely stop by, take a meal, maybe have a drive-through, and then bring my friends and family, like, once every few months, okay? Like,
I
that's
heard
not a problem. We got some
I
good food
heard
here.
I heard ET likes ceviche. That's what I heard. That's
Mm,
what I heard. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're
mm.
big on
That
I
that
thought
that one
just
is really not for me. but I'm not an
What?
alien or anything. Anyways, moving on to our next one, talking about Vandenberg Air Force Base. This is another popular one. So we're not going to go into too much detail on this because I know some of you are familiar with it, but for those that aren't, you are in for a ride because Robert Jacobs, here's an image of him. He had a very strange sighting back in 1964, September to be exact, where he was just recording the sky as part of his job to look at these missiles, to have them launch and make sure that everything goes well and that everything's copacetic, right? But what happens next is what's really shocking because then, according to his story, UFOs shot this beam of light at this missile, deactivated the missile, and then went on its merry way. This was all caught on camera. And it was so significant that right after this sighting, according to Robert Jacobs, the man that we're seeing right here on screen, he had to have a meeting with some higher ups, and in this, there were two people that we can classify as the men in black. They were wearing these decked out nice suits, standing in the corners of the building, of the room, excuse me, ex- listening to what Robert Jacobs had to say about his encounter. And they had mentioned to him, stating, "You will not speak of this. You are not going to tell anyone about this. And if anyone asks, you can say that it was just lasers, okay? Not the laser tracking." But the thing is that laser tracking didn't really exist until the late 1964, 1965. So right before his sighting. And this is a very, very incredible, remarkable case, but it's one that I think people really need to be familiar with when looking at military installations and UFOs. Jimmy, you've looked into this case on multiple occasions, over
Mhm,
decades, actually.
mhm.
What do you think is one of the most crazy things about this?
Well, if you do the work, there is the original footage that is available. Some of it
Well,
of
it's
the
all
encounter.
renditions.
What's that?
They're all renditions. Like, they're not the original,
Uh, Let
or
me
are they?
finish. Yes, let me
Oh,
finish. Okay,
oh.
so Vandenberg, this is one of the biggest installations in the world, let alone the United States. I've been there. I've been on the base, and it's huge. And SpaceX launches out of there. Over the years, I've been in California for 40 years, and I've seen multiple launches since I was a kid, and it happens all the time. And so, because of that, and when you go out there, you see the infrastructure and what is going on. So, they do a lot of launches out of there, but everything is controlled. Everything is recorded. You have instruments and sensor systems, and of course, video and film. Every launch, everything. That's what they do out there. The NRO is out there, and other agencies are stationed and have offices at Vandenberg, and that's what they do. So, this particular launch was allegedly of a nuclear dummy warhead on the tip of this missile. Okay, so that's what they're doing. It's weights and everything else, and you want to see if you can launch it. And if the missile systems are correct. But and then there are other stories to this that say that it was an actual nuclear warhead. When you see the film of the launch, and there are many versions of it, but when you see the original film of the launch, if you can catch it, it certainly looks to me normal, except for the explosion that happens. But then when you look at the original film and then you look really closely, you do see what appears to be a white ball pass behind the missile. In other angles, of it. This is where some of the doctoring came in, and then you see a laser fire out of this thing. But at the time of the explosion of the missile, on the undoctored, the original film, you can see an object, Christine. Yeah, you can see it. You can see it. You can see it pass right behind it. And the instant that that thing is in frame, the explosion happens. Coincidence, Christina? I don't know. I don't know, but it is one of the craziest. And then to have his testimony about uh, what you did see, what you didn't see, all of the film was confiscated. Like I said, there are, I think, two original clean pieces of film of this launch that you can find out there. It's been in a lot of UFO documentaries over the years, and it's one of those cases that we do have on film, and we have the eyewitness testimony, and it happened at a military installation.
And Robert Jacobs has come out, he's written books, he spoke at the National Press Club conference in DC back in the early 2000s as well. So he's been a very outspoken person, even though we had this strange encounter and even though he was told to be silenced as well. But there's another case that takes place in Brazil because we're going all over the world. So I hope you brought your passport with you, Jimmy, because the next place we're stopping at is Brazil, specifically the Fort Itapu in Sao Paulo, Brazil. This is a shocking case, but let me just preface this. Brazil is a wacky country when it comes to UFO sightings and encounters. I don't know what it is about Brazil, but you have some of the most hostile situations and instances compared to so many other parts of the world. And this one is no exception because in November of 1957, at approximately 2 a.m., there was this just crazy UFO sighting in the sky that many military personnel saw, but it got so insane or so intense, I should say, that two military officials had their clothes burned off by this beam of light that was shot out of this UFO. And this is just something that we don't hear very often. We don't hear these intense hostilities in other parts in the world as much as Brazil. Another example is Colares, Brazil, one of my favorite cases of all time. But this this event was only a few minutes long. It was very, very short. However, it was very detrimental. And it was so detrimental. Not only were uniforms ignited by two military officials, but the power also went out there as well. And this is something that, Jimmy, we've covered before, I think in the mysteries of Brazil. Gosh, I want to say 2 years ago now, which is kind of
Probably.
shocking.
Yeah.
But it's one that I think is often overlooked.
Well, the United States Air Force went down and investigated this case. Right. So there was a joint Brazilian Air Force and U.S. Air Force investigation going into this case. I will say this. If you really talk about fear, right? Okay. Fear, right? When it comes to UFOs, the fear factor, you want to throw some fear factor in? They did what? They've got a weapon that'll burn your clothes off. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Say what do they? That's fear factor. That's something that I have never heard, and except for this case, and I've always found that so interesting. You're not, talking about burned skin, or you're not talking about or death ray, or that. No, you're talking about um a nude laser, right? They've got a what? Yeah, man. They can shoot your clothes off. No, 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 no. I want nothing to do with that. And
No,
that's
that
what
is
was.
definitely fear right
Yeah,
there.
that is fear. That is fear. That is fear. For me, it is. And yeah, again, this Donald Kehoe. I keep going back to Donald Kehoe. Donald Kehoe. talked about this case a lot and wrote about this case. And he's a great reference for all things military and UFO throughout the 50s and 60s. And again, he has put this in a couple of different books. And he talked to the investigators that were part of this, both from Brazil and the United States. And yeah, he said, I've got a quote here from Donald Kehoe. You ready? This is what he says about this case. He says, such civilization could see that Earth, that we now have atomic bombs, and we are quickly improving our rockets. Given the past history of mankind, frequent wars showing a belligerent human race, they must have come alarmed. We should therefore expect, especially at these times, to receive such visits. According to this, the main objective of the aliens would be to watch our space improvements, fearing we could become a threat to other planets. If this hypothesis is exact, it could be expanded to link the launching of Sputniks. Remember, that's what was happening in 1957 with the attack on Fort Itaipu. However, this sounded absurd for all of the investigators. It would mean that the aliens would be worried about our first steps in space and by small spaceships so primitive that they would look like a canoe if compared to a transatlantic airliner. This would also mean that those burnings had the purpose of demonstrating the superior weapons that they could use against aggressive explorers coming here to Earth. However, we should still far from piloted from space flight. We're still far from piloted space flight to the moon. And according to human logic, we could not be able to threaten a superior spaceship, not now nor later. And that was those were his comments during his investigation of the Brazilian base attack.
That's It's nice to hear people such as Kehoe to comment on these things. And Mark Tasaka, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. It says, hi, Christina and Jimmy. Super happy I could catch your live stream. I love the amazing work you're doing. Please keep up the incredible work. Thank you. And I had to highlight this one. Talking about Brazil, that truly is a hot spot. Just that was good. That was a good
Yeah,
one.
well done, well done. With they have the nude lasers. That's the superior weapon. And you know, if you're going to use it, go to Brazil, right?
No, 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 no. Just don't use it. And Dan, thank you so much as well for the
Well, I'm
$5
talking
super
about the
chat. It says,
Brazilian beach. I'm talking about the Brazilian beach
well, they
and the
already
nude
have their
laser.
own beaches like that. Yes. It says burning clothes reminds me of the copper foundry I worked at, and they have pure hydrogen peroxide. And if there's a leak that gets on your clothes, they'll combust.
Oh, is
That's
that right?
Well, in that case, I will not be placing my resume to any of those
Yeah,
anytime soon.
yeah. All right. We have T-Ron. I want to circle back to that. I'm looking at
Okay.
the clock. Let me. I'm going to bring in a couple of cases that nobody probably has heard about. All right.
Well,
So, staying in this same timeline. Stay with me. All right. Goose Air Force Base, Newfoundland, June 19th, 1952. Radar picked up an object making 90-degree turns over the base. 90-degree turns. Ground crews working on aircraft all reported what they were seeing. And they described the craft as, and I'm quoting here, this is directly from the Air Force report, a strange red lighted machine over the runway. That's 1952, Christina.
yes. My
Yeah,
eyebrows were all scrunched up because I thought I knew that case,
that's
but I
a
didn't.
that's a crazy
Yeah.
case. A red lighted machine. Now that's how we're talking about the Air Force describing something over the runway, and that's how they didn't say aircraft, they didn't say rocket, they didn't say helicopter. No, a red lighted machine. Why? Because they didn't know what they were seeing. They knew it was mechanical and it's flying and it's above and it was tracked on radar. That was 1952. And I'm going to say this really quick before I go to this next case, which is equally as compelling. Radar was a big deal back then. It was new technology and it was also being advanced very quickly. All right. It came in at the end of World War II. By the 1950s, we had radar installations all around the world, and now we could track stuff in the sky, right? And triangulate, get a bearing, get speed, get altitude. All right. It was a very, very important invention. But to be a radar operator, you were considered an expert in your field. Okay. It was heavy training and very, very, very forward looking technology. So when you look at these old cases like this, not old, I'm going to say historic. You look at these historic cases, when they were looking at stuff on radar, they were used to tracking things at a certain speed because prop airplanes, 400 miles per hour max, right? There were limitations to how fast planes could go. And jets were starting to come into play. 450 miles per hour, 500 miles per hour, not breaking the sound barrier yet. So something moving at 500 miles per hour, to an expert looking at radar back then, minds were blown. They were looking at leading edge technology flying in the skies, whatever it is, whoever was flying it, us or them or whatever, but they were also using the best technology that we had at the time. So when you see something like this with Goose Air Force Base, and they're looking at something taking 90-degree turns in the description, and then you have the eyewitness testimony from the ground crews. So you get this triangulation of information coming in, right? All right. So now let's move to Tinker Air Force Base in Wichita, Kansas. Major Air Force installation here in the United States. And this was on August 1st, 1965. Not one, not two, not three, 4 objects were tracked by radar and reported by the Oklahoma Highway Patrol. So, again, tracked on radar above the Air Force Base, seen and reported on and called in on the ground by the Oklahoma Highway Patrol at the same time. And now all of this was reported on by the New York Times. And the article is pretty incredible when you read it. And just to think, this is just one, there are thousands of cases like this. Now, I'm going to go back to 1952, and we're going to go over to Japan. Oneida Air Force Base, that's the United States Air Force Base in Japan, August 5th, 1952. Ground Control Intercept Station, that's what it's called, picks up a track of a saucer. And this is their words from the official military report. They describe it as a saucer. All right. And the saucer is hovering near the airport runway tower where the air traffic controllers are. They've got a flying saucer near the tower. Okay. And now I'm quoting from the report. Quote, the mysterious craft divided into 3 units as if 2 other saucers had been launched from the first. This is coming from the United States Air Force Base. There you go, right there. There it is. Thank you for that, Cristina. Then they said the tower reported the 3 craft then raced off and disappeared. That's crazy. And again, I want to stress this. This is an Air Force, United States Air Force Base in Japan. You're looking at a picture of the Air Force Base right there. and at the front of first line of defense, not only for Japan but for the United States. Our best technology and our best crews were all stationed there. And this is from the official military report that they had a saucer outside of the tower on the runway on the base that divided into other craft and then flew away.
That's and yet it's shocking, but it's not shocking because we've heard this so many different times. But the question that I posed at the very beginning of the show, and I'm gonna put it again here, insert, why? Why are we seeing UFOs over military installations? Why are they observing military installations, ones that have nukes and ones that don't? What's the purpose? Are our minds even able to rationalize a possible answer?
Well, yeah. I mean, for me, there is the military, any country's military, is going to be an example of the most advanced technology that civilization has up to that point. And that you can go throughout history: knives, swords, bows and arrows, the wheel, chariots, right? All the way through to aircraft and tanks and ships and submarines. This is all missiles and rockets and satellites. This is all leading edge technology. And they're going to be centrally located at military bases. So, yeah, if you're ET, you're interested in Earth and where we are with our technology, go and check out a military base. You're going to see our fastest aircraft, our leading edge technology, what our forces are doing, and also where our moral standards and moral compass is, right? And you would get all of that. You'd be able to glean so much information. Our communication technologies, our computer technologies, of course, aircraft and ground transportation, what kind of weapon systems we have, what our sensor data is. Remember one important thing. All right, this is where I'm going. Up until 1945, ET could come and go here without any issues. And what do I mean by that? We didn't have radar. There was no way to detect anything, right? So before 1945, this is recent history. Before 1945, you could enter Earth's atmosphere and surprise everybody. Nobody would know that you were there. After 1945, we have radar. And now we have satellites and satellite sensor data. So it's harder for ET. Before, Christina, they were just doing a drive-by. Just cruise on in, right? Just cruise on in. Undetected. Nobody would know until you were seen by a set of eyeballs. Nobody would know. After that, after 1945, much more difficult. So they would have to have devised ways to get around radar, to get around the sensor data, and possibly this is an interdimensional conversation that we're having now. That would be a way to get here. You're not pulling up in a metallic craft that's being tracked by radio telescopes for a few million miles from Earth. It's a different situation. So that's the way that I look at it. Yeah, yeah.
And there's
It's the
also a
only
lot
thing
of
that makes sense.
sightings. Oh my gosh, yes. And there's also, a handful of sightings where people see objects, these strange UFOs in the sky, but that they're not being tracked on radar. So I think they're probably still able to still go through drive-through and collect the food that they want and not be detected. It just
Right.
depends, I'm gonna guess here, on the technology and maybe even the different entities that are operating this type of technology.
Let's go to Ryan Graves for a second.
Okay.
And what Ryan Graves stated, not only on my show but publicly and under sworn testimony too as well, has said this: One day they're out flying. The next day they've got upgraded radar systems, and now they're in the same area. Suddenly, all of these craft were there, right? Undetected with the older version of the radar systems. And they upgraded the radar, and now they were seeing hundreds, right? Now, just think about that for a second. And I think that makes an awful lot of sense. And that also could go back to the Nimitz. Remember that also they were testing upgraded radar and sensor systems there. Kevin Day has talked about that part of the story a lot, and that would make a lot of sense. ET is doing the same thing that our adversaries are constantly doing. How do you outsmart, right? Stealth technology, stealth fighter, invisibility, cloaking technology. I think that ET would have to apply all of that. Before 1945, before 1900, we didn't have anything, right? We barely had electricity. Barely. So before then, it was the wild, wild west. Going back to the beginning of time, it was very, very easy for ET to come and go. Suddenly, electricity, radar, very complex weapon systems are in play, including missiles and lasers on satellites and everything else. It made it much, much more difficult. How would you find out about all of this? You would go and test the systems that are in place above and you're muted.
Yes.
But that it's a fascinating thing. So I know we're at the end here. I don't know if you want to jump into something like Los Alamos, which is also very important. But
Yeah,
for
we can
everybody,
definitely
let's squeeze
throw
it.
it in there for the next few minutes before we end today's show. And if you're enjoying all the cases that we're covering and all the stories as well, please hit that like button right down below and subscribe if you haven't already, as we do several shows right here every single week. So this Los Alamos sighting is one that Jimmy actually told me over the phone that I vaguely knew about, but shockingly, I wasn't familiar with all of the details that took place in the year 1950. So I have to hand this one over to you.
Well, what was going on? Los Alamos. Everybody's seen the movie Oppenheimer, and we know what Los Alamos was, which was a city, town that was built by the Pentagon to develop the atomic bomb. And there you go. There's the main gate of Los Alamos. So the brightest that we had, the best physicists and engineers and scientists around the world were stationed there to develop atomic weapons. And after Trinity happened, and then, of course, a couple of days after that, we dropped the bombs on Japan. But the research continues to this day. It's still a huge research facility and laboratory. But around 1949, I've got a scratchy throat, so excuse me. It's allergies. You know what's weird? I feel I'm normal, right? I feel normal. Everything is perfect. But allergies, man, all you want to do is sneeze and you have a scratchy throat. It is the most irritating, and there's like nothing you can do. You're just at the mercy of nature. So anyway, so this is what happens. 1949. The scientists and physicists at Los Alamos started to see green objects in the sky above Los Alamos, multiple objects at the same time. And it was happening so consistently that they were not only going out there and looking at them and observing them, but they were writing about it and reporting on it. And they were thinking, as they should, it's them Russians, right? They're watching what we're doing. Somebody is, And so it got so out of control that the Pentagon installed not one, not two, but three radar sites triangulated around Los Alamos. Now, they're not operational today, but the buildings are still there. And I've seen a few documentaries of people going out. I do want to go at some point one day and go to Albuquerque and visit these buildings because there's other infrastructure that is there too as well to support that. Sleeping quarters and stuff like that. Three spots. Why? They wanted to track these objects and triangulate them. And you do that when you have three radar stations and you're able to get altitude and location if you have three radar stations. And that's what they did in Los Alamos. And they were operational all the way through the 1960s.
And this is something that is worth noting just because when we're dealing with the bombs that were tested there, and during those tests, supposedly, allegedly, there were UFO sightings simultaneously. So then to see that kind of activity once again makes me question, were they still doing these tests during that time frame? Were they measuring the radiation in that area as the days, the weeks, and the years progressed? And why even bother to observe that in the middle of nowhere, right? A lot of the times when people are having their own UFO sightings, they usually feel like they are being observed, or that these craft in the sky are observing the environment. And are they just being in the sense of what we would classify as biologists or exobiologists, right? Exobiologists in this case, or are they here to monitor how humanity is evolving? Are they here to see how their test subjects are doing, right? The possibilities here really makes us scratch our heads into attempting to understand what they're thinking, where their mentality is going, and why they're observing very specifically military installations. Or are they observing everything with this equal level of discipline and observation, but we're just seeing it very acutely over military installations?
The all great points. And I'll leave everyone with this something to ponder. When you look at Earth in 1945 to 1955, all right, that 10-year run, the smartest people on the planet all lived in New Mexico. That's it. The most advanced, secret, secure situations that you can have on the planet were all happening in New Mexico. You had the only atomic bomb wing, bombers with atomic bombs were in Roswell, New Mexico. You had the Trinity test site. You had the White Sands Missile Range. You had Kirkland Air Force Base. And of course, you had Los Alamos. The absolute smartest, brightest, where humans were, where Earth was, as far as an evolutionary scale, was all happening in the state of New Mexico. So if you're ET and you want to know what's going on and where we are at that point in our history, you're going to go to New Mexico. There's no question about it. And Roswell was not an anomaly that happened for a reason. And everything else that was going on in New Mexico with multiple sightings, many sightings, and the eyewitness testimony, the secrecy and the cover up, the ideas of the men in black and how to cover up a story and how to hide a story all came out of New Mexico. And the development, the Manhattan Project, was something that nobody knew about in the world until we dropped bombs on Japan. You want to keep a secret? That's an example of it. And where did that ability, that idea, the logistics of the cover up like that at that scale? New Mexico. Aliens, Roswell, the cover up, New Mexico, all at the same time. And that's why ET had such an interest there. That's my take. I'm going to stick by it. Cristina, another great show. Welcome back. Welcome back.
Back at ya.
Thank you so much. I'll see everybody tonight. Oh, look what I'm doing tonight on the show. I've got the one and only Don Schmidt on Fade to Black, and we're going to be talking about New Mexico tonight, the Roswell mystery. Yeah, perfect. I'll see everybody tonight. Thank you, Cristina.
Thank you. Thank you. Another great show. And this topic always needs to be spoken about. Something else to mention here is that when we are looking at these cases, these incidents, could it be that maybe these objects in the sky are attempting to force the military to speak out about these sightings? Are these entities operating these UFOs working with the military or working against them? It's another possibility. X, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. It says, I've been seeing repeating numbers like crazy recently. Just wondering if you've had any synchronicities lately or anything strange in general. I think anyone that watches these shows, you live a strange life. Now, when it comes to synchronicities, when they stand out, but I don't get them that often. And I've never had a deja vu before. I'm waiting for the day, but I haven't ever had it, and I'm excited to see what the future holds for that one. If you enjoyed the show, hit that like button right down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. And I do write articles for all the shows right here. You can find them on my website at strangeparadigms.com. You can scan this QR code, or you can find that link in the description box below. That is it for today. I will see you next time. Be safe, and remember, keep your eyes on the skies. If you enjoy the strange and the mysterious, UFOs, the paranormal, and cryptids, this channel is for you. So make sure to subscribe, as I do 3 videos right here every single week, and hit that notification bell so you do not miss any of the bonus content I post right here.